Hello, this is Dr. Cedric Wood here in Dallas, Texas, July 11th, 2018. And I watched a repeat of the Dr. Phil show today, and it's just incredible. Dr. Phil does a great job. It was a man who had two women in his life. One was called his queen, and the other woman that was the focus of the program was called his princess because sometimes she did not follow what he said she should follow. He sends them out with the child he had with the one to beg for food. It looks like they live not in an apartment, but in a hotel room. And he pontificates about the way the world should be. He has great ideas for how society needs to change, and he's going to make society better. And of course, along the way, these two little children are being exposed to angry cuss words and pontificating, and because they took video of it like Dr. Phil does, and Dr. Phil rightly found him lacking and the mother lacking because they could not see that this is abusive. So that's what the show was about. Wonderful. Here's the thing I'd like to add. The show's really not long enough for Dr. Phil to go into understanding the psychological reasons for their behavior. It was very clear that this man was abused or neglected or traumatized as a child. So he's wounded on the inside. That's what's called the wounded child. And that hole in the soul that woundedness creates one of two psychological realities. One is an emptiness, and the other is the presence of a drive, almost like a generator. The emptiness causes him to want to do things to fill the emptiness up. And the second thing, the generator, drives him to do what he's probably good at, and that is try to change systems. Now, if he hadn't had the childhood trounsel, that's what I call it, the trauma and the rejection and the abuse and the neglect and the chaos and the loss, if he hadn't had that, his intelligence would be putting him into a job where he would do a great job. He's got fire, he's got passion, and he's got a good IQ. But because of the hole in his soul, because of the childhood unresolved issues, he acts it out in the sense of getting two women he can control and browbeat and share his dream of the world with him, where? At the very top of the world. He is the savior, and the way he talks about that and plans for that means that his grandkids are not being well taken care of, and neither are these two women. So on the show, her parents were there telling them that they weren't going to put up with it. Now let's examine the woman. She obviously had some kind of trounsel, trauma, rejection, abuse, neglect, chaos in her life, which created a hole in her soul. So she has a wounded ego, a wounded inner child. And so that leaves her looking for some powerful presence to fill that need. And she goes into ego-driven thinking and behaving, just as he does. Both of what they're doing is exhibiting ego-driven, ego-defensive, ego-protective behavior. So when Dr. Phil tried to give them wise advice about this wasn't good for children, she came up with two responses that I noticed. One is that she said, well, these kind of words and this kind of passion is out there in the world. Okay, so since these kind of cuss words and angry diatribes are out in the world, then the kids should be exposed to it so that they can toughen up, so that they can get used to it, so that they can gird themselves or armor themselves against it? And that's a good thing? No. She's skipping over the damaging effects of it on these kids. And another thing she said was that if they're exposed to it, then